He walked onto a plane as an ordinary passenger, but walked off history's stage as a legend. On November 24, 1971, a man calling himself Dan Cooper executed one of the most daring hijackings ever. He took $200,000, leaped from a plane into a raging storm, and then nothing. No confirmed identity, no body, no answers. Even the FBI eventually gave up, but new clues, strange confessions, and a shocking discovery decades later might hold the key to solving the case. So who was D.B. Cooper, and is it possible he got away with it? Let's find out. It all started on a rainy afternoon, November 24, 1971. A man dressed in a dark suit, black tie, and a white shirt walked into Portland International Airport. He carried nothing but a small briefcase and a one-way ticket to Seattle. The name on the ticket? Dan Cooper. Cooper took seat 18C on Northwest Orient Flight 305, a short 30-minute trip to Seattle. Witnesses described him as calm, polite, and unremarkable. He ordered a bourbon and soda, quietly observing the other passengers. But just after takeoff, everything changed. At 3 p.m., Cooper handed a note to a flight attendant, Florence Schaffner. Used to businessmen flirting, she slipped it into her pocket without reading it, until Cooper leaned in and whispered, "Miss, you'd better read that. I have a bomb." Her hands shook as she unfolded the paper. Inside was a chilling message. $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, no funny business, or everyone dies. Cooper then opened his briefcase just enough to reveal a tangle of wires and red cylinders, convincing enough to make her comply without question. She rushed to the cockpit, relaying the hijacker's demands to the pilot. The crew immediately contacted air traffic control, and within minutes, the FBI was on the case. Meanwhile, the passengers continued their flight, completely unaware that their plane had just been hijacked. As authorities scrambled to gather the ransom, Cooper sat back, smoking a cigarette, sipping his drink, and waiting, completely in control. But what happened next would turn him into a legend. At 5:24 p.m., Flight 305 landed at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. The ransom money and parachutes were quickly loaded onto the plane, just as Cooper had demanded. True to his word, he released all 36 passengers, along with 1 flight attendant. But the remaining crew? They weren't going anywhere. Cooper had unfinished business. With the money in hand, he gave his next set of instructions, ones that made it clear he knew exactly what he was doing. The plane was to take off again, heading south toward Mexico City, but at an unusually low altitude of 10,000 feet. The cabin had to remain unpressurized, and the landing gear had to stay down. His final request? The rear staircase must stay extended during flight. The pilot protested. This was far from normal, but Cooper was firm. He even had one of the flight attendants read aloud the manual for the Boeing 727, confirming that the rear staircase could be lowered midair. This wasn't a desperate man making demands on impulse. He had planned for this. At 7:40 p.m., the plane took off once again, flying into the pitch-black sky, rain hammering the fuselage. Inside the cockpit, the crew sat tensely, following orders. Cooper remained in the rear of the plane, methodically strapping on a parachute, securing the bag of cash, and preparing for his escape. Then, at exactly 8:13 p.m., something happened. The pilots felt a sudden shift in the plane, a sharp upward tilt, as if weight had been lost from the aircraft. The pressure changed. D.B. Cooper was gone. Somewhere over the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest he had jumped, vanishing into the freezing night 10,000 feet above the ground. No one saw him go. No one knew where he landed. And for decades, no one would find a single trace of him. The moment the plane landed safely in Reno, Nevada, the FBI swarmed the aircraft. Agents rushed inside, expecting to confront a hijacker, but found only an empty cabin and an open rear staircase. D.B. Cooper was gone. Within hours, a massive manhunt was underway. Authorities focused their search on a vast, heavily forested stretch of land along the plane's flight path, an area covering parts of Washington and Oregon. Helicopters, ground teams, and military aircraft scoured the rugged terrain, looking for any sign of a parachute, a body, or the stolen money. But the search teams quickly faced an overwhelming challenge. The wilderness was vast, the weather was brutal, and no one knew exactly where or even when Cooper had jumped. The Pacific Northwest in late November was unforgiving. Freezing temperatures, dense woods, and rushing rivers made survival nearly impossible for anyone landing unprepared. Yet, despite weeks of searching, authorities found nothing. No footprints, no parachute, no remains. It was as if D.B. Cooper had vanished into thin air. The FBI interviewed every passenger and crew member, analyzed every piece of evidence left behind, and even tested the tie Cooper left on his seat for traces of DNA. But there was no definitive lead, no clear suspect. Then, nearly a decade later, something strange happened. In 1980, a young boy named Brian Ingram was digging along the banks of the Columbia River, about 20 miles from Cooper's suspected jump site. Buried in the sand, he found something shocking. 3 bundles of decayed $20 bills, still wrapped in the same bands used by the FBI. The total? $5,800 in ransom money. It was the first and only piece of Cooper's loot ever recovered. But the discovery raised even more questions than it answered. Why was only a fraction of the money found? If Cooper had died in the jump, where was the rest of the cash? Had it been carried by the river, or was it deliberately buried? Some even suggested Cooper, or an accomplice, had returned years later to plant the money as a distraction. One thing was clear: the mystery was far from over. With no body, no parachute, and only a small portion of the ransom recovered, the question remained: did D.B. Cooper survive? Many experts believed that the conditions that night were a death sentence. The wind chill at 10,000 feet was well below freezing, the storm was relentless, and Cooper had no clear way of knowing exactly where he would land. If he had miscalculated and landed in a river or on jagged terrain, survival would have been nearly impossible. The fact that none of the remaining money ever surfaced suggests that either Cooper died in the jump or he successfully disappeared without ever spending the stolen cash, an unlikely scenario. But others argue that Cooper knew exactly what he was doing. His specific flight instructions, knowledge of the Boeing 727 staircase, and calm demeanor suggest that he may have had a military or paratrooper background. If that was the case, could he have planned an escape route, stashed supplies, and slipped into obscurity? Over the years, multiple suspects have emerged, each with compelling connections to the crime. Richard McCoy was a former Army pilot and hijacker who pulled off a remarkably similar skyjacking just months after Cooper's disappearance. He used the same ransom and parachute tactic but was caught shortly after. Many believe he was a copycat, while others suggest he was the real D.B. Cooper testing his luck a second time. Then there was Kenneth Christensen, a former Northwest Orient employee and military paratrooper. He had an unexplained increase in wealth after the hijacking and was allegedly seen laughing while watching a D.B. Cooper documentary before telling his brother, "There's something you should know, but I can't tell you." And then there's Robert Rackstraw, a Vietnam veteran with extensive flight and parachute training. Some researchers claim he even left behind cryptic messages that match FBI files on Cooper, but when confronted, Rackstraw denied everything, calling it a wild conspiracy. Could one of these men have been D.B. Cooper, or was the real hijacker someone else entirely? Someone who pulled off the perfect crime and vanished forever. One thing's for sure, the FBI spent 45 years searching for him, but in the end, they were left with more questions than answers. For decades, the FBI followed every lead, analyzed every suspect, and chased every possible clue. But in 2016, after 45 years of dead ends, they did something shocking. They closed the case. With no definitive evidence and no new breakthroughs, the FBI officially stopped investigating, leaving D.B. Cooper's fate an open-ended mystery. But even as law enforcement gave up, the public's fascination only grew stronger. Some believe Cooper left behind cryptic messages in letters sent to newspapers after the hijacking. Letters that claimed he had survived and was watching the world scramble for answers. Others suspect he confessed on his deathbed, his identity buried with him. To this day, armchair detectives, codebreakers, and amateur investigators pore over old evidence, hoping to crack the case. Some search for hidden clues in FBI documents, while others believe there's still money waiting to be found in the forests of the Pacific Northwest. Every few years, a new theory emerges, rekindling the mystery. So, Did D.B. Cooper live out his days in secret, enjoying his stolen fortune? Or did he meet his end in the wilderness that night, his remains forever lost to time? Even now, no one truly knows. But one thing is certain. Whoever D.B. Cooper was, he pulled off one of the greatest unsolved crimes in American history. So, what do you think? Did D.B. Cooper survive and disappear, or was his daring escape his final act? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't like this video, and definitely don't subscribe. You wouldn't want weekly doses of mind-blowing mysteries, creepy legends, and unexplained events, would you? Yeah, I didn't think so. And whatever you do, don't click on the video above, unless you want to uncover the secrets they don't want you to know.